It's the real-life Loch Ness Monster, the creature from the Black Lagoon, a weird science-y fact that boggles my mind. We know about the long-lost life that has come before us thanks to fossil records that have been left behind. And occasionally we're lucky enough to have things called living fossils, which are animals that survive today with minimal changes from their prehistoric parents. Like alligators, crocodiles, and sharks, animals that have beat the evolutionary odds of multiple mass extinctions. But as a rule of thumb, when something's been extinct for 65 million years, living isn't a term that gets tacked onto their taxonomy. However, a fish called a coelacanth didn't get the memo, and like a man on a plague cart, it let us know it wasn't dead yet and swam out of extinction 5 years after another living fossil, Chuck Grassley, was born. Coelacanths are a well-documented fish from the fossil record. The oldest fossils first appearing about 420 million years ago. We have about 100 fossils documenting different species existing up until about 65 million years ago. Now, 65 million years ago is about the same time that the dinosaurs left the chat, and when a fossil record abruptly ends, it's usually a safe bet that the creatures they belong to went extinct. But in 1938, fishermen off the coast of South Africa caught one. Now, these are 6.5 foot long, 200-pound fish that are estimated to live for a century. And between the Crustaceous and Christopher Lloyd, we had no known evidence that there was a fish the size of Charles Barkley out there swimming around at any given point in that time frame. And then it just pops up alive and well right before the Blitzkrieg. Put that into perspective, that's like finding a velociraptor rooting through your recycling. It just doesn't happen. Since then, they've caught more of them, they've observed them in the wild, and then in the 1950s, they found a completely different species of them living 1,200 miles away. But these aren't just any really old fish. Cool thing about coelacanths is they are unlike anything else alive today and have no close living relatives. Well, 99% of fish alive today are ray-finned fish, you know, the types of fins you normally picture when you picture a fish fin. Coelacanths are more closely related to tetrapods or land animals because their fins are limbs. They've got bones that go into them, and they use them in tandem, kind of like limbs, and they walk through the water. Now, when they observed this in the fossil record, they assumed that they used these limbs to walk along the bottom of oceans, lakes, and streams. And even for a while after they were found alive, they thought that they might be the missing link of when life crawled onto land. Turns out they don't, and they're not. Well, their distant but closest living relative is the lungfish. The coelacanth's eyesight and circulatory system are designed for low light, low oxygen areas, meaning that they have little interest coming close to the surface, let alone crawling up on top of it. We've also found no direct genetic lineage to any land animals today. That's not even the most interesting thing about them, because while their limb-like fins might be rare, their skull is one of a kind. Like us and most things with bones, a coelacanth is a vertebrate. And most vertebrates' vertebrae start out as something called a notochord. I think that's how you say that? Which is just a semi-rigid cord that in the embryonic stage develops into individual rigid vertebrae that become our spine. So when we're born, we have a backbone. Also, speaking of being born, coelacanths have a gestation period of a year and give birth to live young, which is a fun, weird fact for a fish. And when those young are born, they don't have a spine. They just keep the notochord forever. And that allows them to have a hinged skull. When they open their mouth, not only does their jawbone drop open like every other living thing, their skull hinges open like the lid of a treasure chest so they can open their mouth extra wide like something from a horror movie. Now, coelacanths are listed as critically endangered, which is bad, but also considering we thought that ship had sailed like 65 million years ago, they're doing pretty good, all things considered. And that said, we don't really know if they're endangered or not. Obviously, they're not like super easy to find, so we don't really know how many of them are out there. They also don't survive in captivity, so they're not very easy to study. And obviously, not being dead yet is kind of their shtick. So there's a possibility they could be doing okay, but it's better to be safe than sorry because nobody wants to be the asshole that causes the extinction of something that went extinct 65 million years ago. And the fact that a Back to the Future fish we only ever foresaw finding as a fossil has now frequently been found floating around since the 40s and 50s, well, that is pretty mind-boggling.